Well, hey, welcome back to the Horror Score Studios. We're your hosts, Jesse and
Vanessa.
And this week's episode is
Rose Red,
which we don't own. This is a weird one. We had to watch it on YouTube in 4 parts.
Oops.
Which I realized afterwards, I had bought this movie for my mother for Christmas in like 2004 or so.
It's a great gift.
It was just sitting at my parents' house. I did not remember that. We had to go through the trouble of watching it in pieces on YouTube. But here we go. You want to start us off, Vanessa?
So, before we get into it, these next couple of episodes are special. You might be saying, actually, Rose Red isn't a feature film. Because, yeah, you're right. It's not. Rose Red is a mini-series that aired on TV. Well, that's what these next couple episodes are. Our favorite TV mini-series. This one happens to be mine, Rose Red.
So, a little bit about this movie as we get into story. Vanessa, do you want to start us off?
I sure do.
All right.
This mini-series has a little interesting history. Stephen King actually pitched this to Steven Spielberg in 1996 as a feature-length film. They were going to actually film this, which would be a remake of the Robert Wise 1963 film, The Haunting, which was a movie based on Shirley Jackson's 1959 novel, The Haunting of Hill House. Also has its own miniseries at this point. But then in 1999, if you might remember, that Liam Neeson, Catherine Zeta-Jones movie that came out, The Haunting, totally took the wind out of their sails. And Stephen King ended up just rewriting the script into a television miniseries, which actually, over the 3 nights that it aired on ABC, had 18.5 million views. So I think he did pretty well, considering.
Now, of those 18 million people watching, I was not one of them because this was my very first watch of this movie. I had made it my whole life. I'd heard about it. People at work talking about it. It's come up dozens of times in conversations I've had, and every single time I had to be that person, who says midway through the conversation, I've never seen Rose Red, and they go, oh, really? And that's how we stumbled on doing this for Horror Score. She was like, oh my God, you haven't seen that?
Well, it's because it was so important to me as a child because, well, first of all, I was a child when this came out. I was probably 9 and you were like 20.
45.
45. He was 45. So, I would just be like flipping through the channels and it just felt like it was always on. I would always come in at like the same scene. Now it's 4 hours long.
And 14 minutes.
So, it was hard to catch it at the beginning. All right, so I'm just going to continue on with this story.
Let's get into it.
I gave this story 12 points. Obviously, I think Shirley Jackson is just an incredible novelist, especially in the horror genre. She was like way ahead of her time. But, this story pulls in lore from the Winchester house and various haunted houses, and this particular plot is basically a college professor leads a team of psychics in an investigation into this house that she has spent the past 10 or 15 years of her career investigating.
I also gave it a 12. There were parts of the story I liked. I really wanted it to be more like House of Leaves is a book that I absolutely love that sounds very similar. Like the house is bigger on the inside than on the outside, and there's some mystery. Is the house alive? And even though I didn't quite get that, there were some parts of the house that I really liked that as it changed as the movie went on. But I hated not the cast, because I liked a lot of the cast, but the characters that the cast was playing, which I guess...
Can we just get a photo up?
Yes.
Of this
this one character. Every time he's on screen, he's just the worst.
But that's why he's a great character.
I get it. Like it's like when you're a wrestler, and you're a bad guy wrestler, the more people who boo for you, the better you're doing. But I found myself being like, I hate that character, and I hate this character, and I don't like this character. So the characters brought me down a lot.
Emery.
Something that really got under my skin about the plot is this is all people who believe in ghosts and are psychic.
That's not true. They're psychics, and some of them literally still don't believe.
Well, that's what my point was, that they all know that like powers exist, because one person's an empath, one person's a telepath, one person, can like touch something and see the past or the future.
Or dead people.
Yeah, but when we put all these super hyper aware people together and then ghost activity starts, it just really irks me that a lot of them, or some of them, are like, this isn't happening. I can't believe this.
Well, it's because they have to believe in this is like a ragtag group of people that
Yes.
Some of them hate each other, some of them like each other, some of them get along, some of them don't. And so whenever one of them has this power and this power kind of goes off, and so you have to trust that one person to believe that whatever they say is going on, they're not going to believe it because they don't trust that person. So it has nothing to do with like them not believing in their own powers. They just hate each other.
I wish more of the story was less around, because I mean it gets, they're at each other's throats a lot, where there's like probably 2 hours of arguing in this 4 hour and 14-minute movie, and that's where I think a chunk of stuff could have been cut out.
And there's a lot, they do that enough to make me go, I have no idea who to trust. I have no idea who's actually a good person, who's just like socially inept, and who's evil.
Well, would you take us into villain? You want to get us started on the villain category of Rose Red?
Sure. So I only gave villain a 10. I thought all of the ghosts were pretty creepy, and they had kind of their own origin stories, but because there are so many of them, it's kind of like this whole 13 ghosts thing, where you wish that an origin movie could just, about every one of them could happen, so that you could really dive in, because all these ghosts died at different points during the house existing, and so I really wanted to know more about their specific deaths and their specific ghosts. But the house itself was really creepy, and the walls move, and doors to certain rooms exist sometimes and sometimes they don't, and the more death that happens, like the more power the house has. So I thought the house as a villain was cool, but could have done like way more with it.
I'm pretty much with you there. I gave it a 9. I wanted the house to be more of a force, I guess. Like I wanted to feel like the house was, I'm not sure if it was just really haunted or alive and haunted, but I wanted the house to feel more alive than it was.
I agree. They like gave you hints basically, so you knew that the house had weird powers, but then they didn't like utilize that.
Like there was this one scene that I think it was the probably the best scene for me with the house is when you get like the Children of the Corn floor bump that's like going down the halls. It's just this like, it's kind of like from the Children of the Corn, or there's like the end of the movie The Thing,
or like Tremors.
Yeah, it's just this bump in the floor that goes really fast, and the floorboards go like like behind it, and it's under the rug. I liked that, but we didn't get enough of it. I would like to have seen more of it, almost to the point of the movie Monster House. Have you seen Monster House? Adorable like horror movie for kids. It's CGI, it's fun.
Right.
I wish it was more like Monster House, in the sense where we just got like, as the movie went on, like parts of the house was like teeth and scary bits, and
I think that like there was that one, or there's a couple scenes in that chandelier room, like the room of mirrors.
Yep.
Where that older woman is kind of the whole floor is like a mirror, and she's kind of getting like sucked down into it, as if the
like
mirror
mercury.
is water. Yeah, like it's mercury, and she was able to like sink down into it.
That till just now.
Yeah, so there's like cool things like that happen, or they don't want to get lost in a house because they know it plays tricks on them, so they have a string that they like unravel as they're walking through the house and upstairs, and they go to follow it back, and the string goes through a wall. Like it's just like taut like right up against the wall. So like proving that like the house really does like change and morph, but then they didn't do as much scary stuff with that as they could have.
You want to lead us into horror?
Sure. I gave horror 12 points. And so and maybe it's because I've seen this movie a stupid amount of times, and so I remember like all of the specific deaths very well. But there were some really interesting house kills. So if you remember when the older man goes out with his pajamas,
Yep.
yeah, and he goes out to the fountain, and the fountain like kind of like comes alive and does this weird stuff, and it basically almost scares him to death, kind of thing. Like there were some interesting choices where that I just felt I hadn't really seen before. Like I wouldn't have thought to like make that statue come to life, or even the like plants on the property were evil, basically. And so
Audrey 2s.
yeah, so like whenever they were in like the greenhouse or whatever, like there were deaths there. They were bees. It was so many different types of death that it wasn't just.
We did get an off-camera death I was sad about.
Yeah, there was, but you know, they've got how many characters that they gotta kill?
7.
And yeah.
6. All right, well, I mean, I'm pretty close to you on that too. I gave horror an 11, and I think it's just because for me there was too much time between the scary moments, and there were cool scary moments, and there were intriguing moments and mysterious moments. But when it got back to the squabbling, you know, like you get so removed, you forget that you were like, oh yeah, we're in a scary situation right now where we're trapped in this house that will not let us out right now because the people have been arguing for 45 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So I did give it an 11 because it does peak and then it kind of goes down and it peaks and it goes down. So that's where I landed. So we're actually really close right now.
How about effects?
Okay, you want me to lead us into effects?
Yes.
I will. I gave effects a 10, even though this movie was 2002. I think that sometimes we really get stuck in some of that 90s movie or made-for-TV movie CGI that people went to too often. I did go back and I actually raised this to a 10 because I found out a lot of shots of the house was a model. Like, and I thought that the house was really cool, that it was just this massive, sprawling, scary-looking place. And I just assumed while watching it that they picked a real building that was just run down and scary-looking like an old asylum. But it was actually a model that they put on like next to a highway, which I thought was cool, that they're trapped in this house and it's spooky and scary.
And they can't get out. And
right
it's
next
so
to the
close
highway.
to like
there's the city, there's the highway.
The sprawl.
Right there.
Yeah, the urban sprawl.
Some of the rooms are really cool. Like there was the upside down room, you know, where the chandeliers
that was
are
all
hanging
a
up.
set that they made.
The mirror room, like you were talking about, the really, really long hallways.
And you really don't spend a lot of time in that upside down. Like there are a lot of rooms
right.
where like the
they
set
go
is,
through it for a minute.
Yeah, which, you know, maybe they could have spent a lot more time in those cool rooms.
So, like, visually, the stuff that was real looked great. And then when they tried to get fancy with the CGI is when, and maybe I'm just, and it's me, like, seeing it for the first time, so I don't even have that nostalgia bubble of being like, well, yeah, I remember it looking better than that. So, for me, it comes in at 10 because it's half good and it's half bad. I'm going to call it right down the middle, 10 points.
I gave it 14 points. Yes, it was 2002, and sometimes the CGI is so laughable, and like even me, whenever I saw it when I was younger, I was like, that's very much fake. That's super fake that they edited that. And so, you know, a lot of the things were like post-production, and they ended up filming this movie very, very quickly, actually, because of that, because a lot of the edit and everything was done afterwards. But I still really, I think I gave it such a high score because I think this is my favorite movie that uses this much. This is my favorite horror movie miniseries that uses that much CGI. I think because of their dedication to it, I think it really worked for me. And there were some cool moments, like when Joyce, the professor, she's like monitoring the ghosts and everything. So she's got these weird cameras set up and these goofy
The movement analyzer.
the movement analyzer
And the people proximity counter.
So like it's this little counter of like how many ghosts are in the room. Like there are these fun little like mechanisms that they're using. You mentioned that you were like, wow, like that was a model, and like you had to go back in and add more points. It was so everything that's shot on the inside, and a lot of the exterior scenes that are close up were filmed at Thornwood Estate in Washington, and so they actually rewrote the script, so they were just going to film it on a set in LA, but then Stephen King got permission to film at this estate, and he thought that would be a lot more authentic and cool to film in, so they filmed it at this estate.
Take us into S Factor, where we can award whatever points we want to in this final category, but you got to justify it.
I awarded 15 S Factor points for one, nostalgia, because it definitely impacted my love of horror because it was so accessible too. I didn't have to go find a horror film. This was on ABC. This was on TNT. Like it was something that was so accessible for me when I was younger, that I could just change the channel and find a horror movie. But the character development for most of the psychics, I know you hated the bickering and everything, but I really, really liked that it was just like high school almost. Like this old ass woman, this old man, these like college age nerd, and like just hating each other. There was this English accent guy,
Julian Sands,
he was
Warlock,
like,
which that gave me S Factor points because it was cool to see him in another role.
and he was such a bully. He was
he was a jerk.
Clearly the cool guy, and just hated Emery. Just hated him so much. Oh God.
Well, I gave it 9 S Factor points. In one, Julian Sands, seeing him, like, all right, like that's cool. Stephen King has a cameo. He's a pizza delivery man.
Yeah.
I like that he sticks himself into a lot of his movies, and it was cool to see him be like, yep, true to form. There he is. There's Stephen King delivering some pizzas. And there was another thing. I don't remember his name. Kevin something. Jack's dad from Lost was the guy in the pajamas in the fountain.
Yes.
And there was another character from Scream 3 and Arrested Development. Not Arrested Development. It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. So it was nice seeing some familiar faces. So that's where my 9 points.
One of the Boyle brothers.
Yes. We could put a picture of him up.
And a glass of milk.
So that puts my final horror score total at 51 points.
And it got 63 out of me, so
6 to mine.
6 to yours.
57?
57, hell yeah.
Yeah, all right, so 57 horror score points. That's our combined total. Just some housekeeping stuff. Remember, our episodes are rolling out about once every 2 weeks now. If you do want to get a hold of us, we can be reached at horrorscorereview@gmail.com. Just give us 20 minutes. We might save you 2 hours.
Stay spooky.